Hello everyone. So I wanted to do a video covering the first presidential debate between Trump and Biden. But first, just wanted to go back and cover something like this press conference that Trump had gave and gave a pretty concerning answer. And this ties into stuff that was discussed in the debate as well. But I'm pretty sure that Trump is setting up the narrative and the expectation that he's going to contest the results of the election if he loses. Um, as I've said before, I think Biden, you know, I think he's probably just more likely to win the popular vote. Um, basically, I think it's going to be around the same dynamic as 2016. And in that race, Hillary got 3 million more votes than Trump. So I think it could stay around that, or maybe Biden picks up more of the popular vote. I don't know. That's just my prediction, and I mean, I could be wrong. I'll put that out there. I'm not saying it's at all like sealed away for Biden at this point. Like there's just no way that that's like I'm comfortable saying that because Biden I think is by far and away just underperforming. He's not doing what he needs to in order to um, gain momentum, essentially, to pick up more voters that he wouldn't normally have. He's catering only to the people that pretty much already like him. Um, but okay, so with Trump, with this press conference, he gave an answer where he's asked about whether there would be a peaceful transition of power, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but like go back and watch the clip. Like he's basically saying, like there's problems with the ballots, and if you get rid of the ballots, there's gonna be a continuation of power. There won't be a transfer. There'll be a continuation of power. Like this seems like very alarming dictator and authoritarian like stuff to be talking in this way that like it should be so easy to just be like, well, sure, I'm willing to wait and see the results of the election, and I'll accept the results. But they want to muddy the waters and make it look like there's this big conspiracy. And the thing that kind of gets me is like they can't even keep what conspiracy it is in their mind. It's just like they go all over the place with this stuff. Like, and Trump was saying this in the debate, bringing up stories which to be fair, like I don't know if the examples he was bringing up are true. I'd have to look into the details of that. But he's saying stuff like ballots are being thrown out and they had Trump on it, Trump military people. He was saying other like people got two ballots, so it's like it just seems like there's all these different theories floating around about what's being done, and it's like, do you really think there's this mass coordination of like the Democrats are taking over the mail-in ballots or something, and like they're swinging the election? Like the main point is like you can't. It's just logistically impossible to try and sway an election this way with voter fraud, and like they just raise issues when there really is not such a big problem. When you look into the problem, like like mail-in voting isn't any more prone to fraud, and they catch cases of fraud. They reject ballots. Like this is there's a process for all these things. Um, and so he's being hysterical about it, and he's trying to make a big thing like they're stealing the election, that this is illegitimate. Um, and it's just again like how are you like they're not showing how this is actually influencing it on such a mass scale that he's gonna lose. Like they just aren't showing the details of that. They're just saying, oh, it's bad, it's fraudulent, and that's it. Like they present that narrative, and whether or not the numbers bear that out, it's like that doesn't matter to them. They just push the narrative that this is not legitimate. And in the case of like Nevada, Roger Stone was on Infowars with Alex Jones, and he was saying like specifically with Nevada that they should um, just confiscate all of those ballots because they have a big Hispanic population, and they're saying there's going to be a lot of illegal immigrants voting. Um, and I mean, look, it's like whether whether or not you agree with that, like illegal immigrants being allowed to vote, essentially flirting with the idea of like bringing about the Insurrection Act and stealing a state's ballots, like this is definitely strongman authoritarianism that we're talking about, and fascism. They take over the state autonomy, and like that's not even a like a conservative right wing thing. It's like they just hold the power of the federal government, and they want to maintain that power, and it's like they don't, doesn't matter to them whether they're infringing on Nevada's right to have their own process for counting ballots. It's like they're just the whole thing is declared illegitimate without any evidence. So that's wrong. And to be all hysterical like you're gonna take the state's autonomy away, and not even that dissimilar from the Trump administration kind of like taking control of the CDC and like manipulating the data for COVID that it's put out there. Like, how do we know like if the state gets these ballots from Nevada or whatever state it is, like now they're legitimate because the federal government, which is run by Trump, says so? And it's like, are they going to conveniently like say that Trump won? Like they are the ones claiming like the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, like they're laying claim to all legitimacy, like Trump is saying, like is like if it doesn't go according to me, then it's not legitimate. So that is a huge problem. um but let's get into what happened at the debate. And they started with the Supreme Court, and Biden, I mean, he gave a pretty good answer in terms of the ACA. He's a little bit repetitive when he talks, and he's not just like, it's very bland, and it just doesn't, I don't know what the word is, but just he's not engaging when he talks, and he doesn't have that sense of urgency when he's talking about these things. And that's a problem in terms of getting his point across. So it's like when you get down to the details of it, like he was right about the effects on the ACA and the effects on healthcare for millions of Americans, like how detrimental that's going to be. That's certainly a result of the Republicans pushing this justice in there. But it's just not enough. Like they don't push back hard enough. Biden and even the Democrats in general now, they're saying that they're not going to go after Amy Coney Barrett, the nominee, because she's an accomplished woman. That's what they're saying. And it's all about the identity politics all day long with them, because that's all that they can cling to is the social issues and, oh, we need diversity and stuff. Okay, well, how about a conversation about Amy Coney Barrett's record? Her record on abortion, and how she's a far right, like Christian fundamentalist essentially. And not only that, but like she's saying that it's her own personal view, and like that's not gonna she's not gonna differentiate between what she does on the court and her personal view. And that's a big problem, because in theory you could be a religious person and say, hey, in terms of my personal practices, I don't condone abortion. I think it's wrong. Like if someone, like in my family, like I wouldn't want that for them. something like that. But someone who's smart, a smart religious person can be like, hey, we're a secular nation, so I can't impose my religious beliefs on the way I interpret the law. And that's exactly what this nominee would do. She's going to impose her religious beliefs into the law and reverse the years of precedent with Roe v. Wade. And that's a big problem. It's actually a very fundamental problem because they talked about this on the Majority Report today with Sam Cedar, and I forget what the name of the concept was called, but this idea that you're basically overturning law that's settled. Roe versus Wade has been settled law for almost like 50 years now. So abortion is essentially a constitutional right because that's what happens when the Supreme Court rules. That's the law, the supreme law of the land, and they're basically saying and articulating exactly, I suppose, how it's how it fits into the constitutional framework. So, if you're going to reverse precedent, then there's got to be a pretty good reason for it, and you got to be very delicate about how you do that. I mean, because we had the Prohibition era in this country where we outlawed alcohol, and to do that, you needed an amendment in the Constitution, and then later when they ended Prohibition, you needed an amendment to repeal the ban on alcohol. And that wasn't a particularly long period of time. Like the era in this country where we have now legal abortion, codified into law now. It's been a long time, and society has accepted. It's not the most proud thing, right? And it's like people who have to get abortions, like it's not as if they're so proud to go and do this necessarily. Like it's a hard decision for someone to make, and at the end of the day, like putting their feelings aside, like it should be a very small government idea for you to say like the government shouldn't have a say in this. The woman, as long as everything is done safe, and if you want to have that the viability, like not after a certain period of time, except for like in cases of like a medical necessity. Like why is the government telling women what to do with their lives and their bodies? Like that should be a conservative idea to say that. Why is the government stepping into my life here? So. And also on top of this, Amy Coney Barrett was in a lot of cases that she was siding against workers. There was a case with Grubhub. The workers weren't getting overtime pay, and they told them, like you signed a contract, so now you go into arbitration, which basically means you have, like it's a private court where you have people selected by the managerial class. So she's very, on the economics, like I mentioned, like Biden talked about the ACA, like on economics, Barrett is not good either. So there's a lot of points that could have been made, and what Biden had to say was, oh, I think she's probably a nice person, but went on to say why we should wait on this nomination. And it's like that fight may have been. It's too late for that because like Trump could lose the election and still jam in this justice during the lame duck. So, like I said in my previous video, it's like I think the Democrats should do everything to stop the Republicans, but this fight may be lost for us. The best thing we could do is show the damage that it'll do. Like propose legislation that people will like, and then Trump and the Republicans are gonna be like, oh well, if we get this justice in, like it's not gonna work, and that would be a pretty big call to action in a way because in one sense it is hopeless, but people would see the implications of if you have this Supreme Court justice in there and you have in theory, a 5-4 conservative majority, but Roberts, who I think is like the Chief Justice, I don't know what they call that, but like Roberts occasionally will side with the conservative side. So at the very least 5-4, but maybe even 6-3 conservative. Like that is going to have implications well into the decades. If you have a Democratic president, House and Senate, like the Supreme Court could turn down stuff like Medicare for all, turn down any kind of progressive policy that they're going to say doesn't follow the letter of the law of the Constitution. They're going to turn down, and that's that's their power. So it's like when we talk about the hypocrisy of 2016 and Mitch McConnell, it's like they weren't. It's not as if they were acting on like behalf of the American people, like they cared so much about this Supreme Court seat. It's like oh, we gotta wait until the American people have a say. No, they wanted to have more power. That's what they do. And the Democrats, they go along with it. They don't know how to fight. They think everything is so cordial, and like the Republicans are gonna just be respectable and just like what's the word I'm looking for? Like wake up out of their stupor. Like it's just ridiculous what the Democrats do. Like they barely. It's very bare minimum stuff. That's what I saw with this debate. Is Biden didn't take control, and I know Trump, freaking interrupts every second. He's so crass, and Chris Wallace could barely take it. But at the end of the day, Biden had to take control of this debate, and there were just short glimpses of him doing something effective, like making a point that would land. It was good when he talked to the camera. He looked into the camera and was talking to the American people. That seemed good, but just that was not enough. I'm sorry, but just there was so many missed opportunities for Biden. So then we go to healthcare, and when Trump is asked about what is the right wing proposal for the healthcare situation, like what is their plan? He's like, I got rid of the individual mandate. That's a very big part. Can't. It's like that's not a plan. You're just trying to get rid of Obamacare. Like what is your plan? Like what is the healthcare plan proposal for the Republicans? They just can't do this because all they care about is getting rid of the ACA. So he's like, you got rid of the individual mandate. And, by the way, the nuance of how that worked was the individual mandate in the Affordable Care Act was a way for the government forced people to buy private health insurance. That's what that was all about. It helped private health care companies. So that was an Obama plan. It goes to show you how like far left he is. But anyway, so if you didn't buy private health insurance, there was a tax, the individual mandate tax, and what happened was the Republicans changed the penalty to like 0, so there was no longer a penalty. The reason why it was legal in the first place was because it was considered a tax. So once it became like a $0 penalty, they're like, this is no longer a tax, so the individual mandate became unconstitutional according to whatever court ruled that. So like it's still just not a healthcare plan. And at the same time, you have the administration, we have Republicans trying to go to court to get rid of whatever's left of the ACA. They're going after pre-existing conditions because that's like basically all you have left then. And so I have just something from NBC to kind of illustrate this a little better. So Trump has long insisted that he and the GOP will protect people with pre-existing conditions from losing their health insurance, but he has pursued legislation, litigation, and executive actions to dismantle those protections under the Affordable Care Act. A Republican bill backed by Trump included ACA state waivers that would allow insurers to charge higher prices for people with pre existing conditions, potentially pricing them out of the market. It passed the House and died in the Senate in 2017. I believe that was the infamous like John McCain thumbs down vote, if I'm not mistaken. But that was like the only semblance of a Trump healthcare plan, and it was basically just yeah, get rid of the ACA and just go back to the way we had it before. But so Trump has also used executive actions to expand the use of short-term insurance plans that aren't required to cover pre-existing conditions. Trump recently signed a symbolic executive order reaffirming the protections Obamacare created, but his administration is backing a Republican-led lawsuit claiming that the actual protections in the law should be struck down. So people aren't paying attention to what's going on the ground. They're saying like Trump is saying like, oh, I'm going to protect your pre-existing conditions, but the politicians, the people going to court to try and stop that from being the law, like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, and that's because they're saying they're just assuring you it's like, oh, you're definitely going to be covered for these things, but they don't have the actual plan, the actual legislation ready, and it's been 4 years. Like, why don't they have a plan? Like, it didn't pass because of John McCain. Yeah, boo-hoo. Well, you gotta, lead then. You gotta freaking find a way to get your thing passed, and at least, like, know what you're talking about. Like, know what you're advocating for, but it's nothing to them. It's just all just, like, get rid of Obamacare. So then we go to COVID. Trump said there were no negative effects from his rally. And there were like unnotable people that died, but there was Herman Cain, who was a Republican politician who died from contracting COVID at a Trump rally, and his Twitter account to this day still posts stuff about COVID being a hoax or it's blown out of proportion, it's an overreaction. So, in that area, that seemed to be the area where Biden shined the most, is COVID, and that doesn't seem very surprising. Just Trump had a lot of... There was a lot of things that made him look very out of touch and not look good. There was the Bob Woodward tapes, there was the tax returns where we saw he paid only $750 in income tax. So, that was a big deal, and we'll get into that. But, yeah, I just think Biden hammered the most points away when it came to COVID. He talked about how African Americans are affected by disproportionately. Excuse me. So, yeah, not much surprise in terms of that. When we get to the economy and taxes, Trump made the problems worse. So they love to talk about how the billionaires are getting so much money. This is a systemic problem. Your GOP tax law made this worse, and so when Trump he paid $750 in federal income tax, people, and also, by the way, he paid none for 10 to 15 years previous. People should acknowledge that it's a systemic problem, and Biden was not. He wasn't making that point. He should have been the one to say, the problems of inequality are getting worse under you. It's I know you're saying the economy is great, it was booming before COVID, but the wealth was going to the top 1%. It's just the facts of the matter. Regular people were not doing well, even before the pandemic. And it's like Trump tries to act like the Obama recovery was a failure, and it's you're not even factoring in the recession of 2008. And that's what's kind of interesting. It's they don't factor that into. They're saying that the Obama recovery was too slow. It was oh, it was such a slow economy. It didn't recover fast enough. It was better under me. It boomed.
Right. Well, it's like you're going after Obama hardcore for that, even though, I mean, like, there wasn't like another crash or anything. Things were just steadily going back up again. And now we're in essentially an economic depression. And it's like people want to, you know, forgive Trump for that and just be like, oh, it's like it's all China's fault. So, like, okay, well, that just doesn't make much sense to me, because if you're trying to say like Obama was so responsible for this slow growth of the economy, apparently, then how can you tell me like Trump is not responsible for the economic depression going on right now? And because the Democrats are guilty of this too. This is all by design. They bail out the wealthy and the corporations, but the regular people get crumbs. They don't get the economic security during this time. They don't have a UBI. They don't have Medicare for all. It's like this should be so easy for Biden in the middle of a pandemic. Like, expand Medicare for everyone. Like, this is such basic stuff that is such a missed opportunity, and because what they're left with then is just like the cliches. Like I've always said, it's like we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna restore the soul of America. But like they don't actually say how they're gonna do it, because they don't want to be held accountable to the policy that would actually help people. They don't want to champion these solutions because they know that goes against their corporate donors. So Trump went after Biden for the crime bill, and like I've said before, I mean, just like he acts like Biden is still the Antifa candidate and is going to let the anarchists take over the suburbs. I'm sorry, you can't have it both ways. Joe Biden was not soft on crime, as his record shows, as you pointed out, Trump. So you're trying to make the case that Biden is going to let this rioting and these looters, he's going to let them go and do whatever they want. But you're also saying, like look what he did for these super predators. He locked them all up, and now I'm releasing them. I see a lot of people online saying stuff like what about Trump's policies are racist, and you can point to a few other things, like the Civil Rights Act was being gutted under him. There's things in his history too, before he was kind of in politics, about his family denying black families homes because he was in the real estate business. There was also Trump put out that front page ad, I think it was in the New York Times, directed at the Central Park Five, who were, falsely accused of raping this woman, I believe it was, and like Trump was like demanding their execution. And there's going to be other stuff that I'll get into for why Trump is not he's not going after white supremacy as much as he should be. As a matter of fact, I'll just get to that now, I guess. Like, he made a comment where he was asked to condemn white supremacy, and he said specifically the Proud Boys. I don't know if it was Biden or the moderator who said that. Condemned the Proud Boys, and Trump said, quote, "Stand back and stand by," which, I kind of missed how significant that was at first, but it's like, yeah, like that was a very kind of crucial thing there, because different from Charlottesville in the sense that, he was characterizing these people, the white supremacists and the far right people, he was defending them and characterizing them and saying like that there are both people on good sides. But in this case, like Trump is like basically giving an order to white supremacists and far right people, and yeah, I mean that does take it a little like a step further than we're used to seeing, because it's basically the president is communicating with white supremacists. Um, it was a direct thing that he was telling them, and on top of it, like there's this thing that he's pushing, like the poll watchers go to the polls, and I guess you're supposed to watch for nefarious stuff going on. It's like I don't get what this even means. You're gonna go there and watch for what? I don't know. How are you gonna know something out of the ordinary is going on? I don't know, but that is really a lot like stuff that happened during like the pre voting rights and Civil Rights Act passing, Civil Rights era, where you would have white racists like show up to the polling places and push and keep black people away from the polling places. So it's voter intimidation, and it's an attempt to suppress the vote. All of this stuff rolled into one, like the mail-in ballot hysteria and the Proud Boys standing by and the poll watchers like that. And he's like reluctant to go along with the peaceful transfer of power. Like, these are not good signs. Like, anyone who studied history knows that these are pretty telltale signs for fascism. And be honest, like, yeah, like if this was happening in another country, we wouldn't even question it. It would seem like third world Venezuela. That's basically what they complain about with Maduro. Is like the election was illegitimate. So it's like it's not even that far removed from stuff like Russia does. The point that we're at, like I was really kind of surprised how. Well, I mean, not necessarily surprised. I mean, I know Trump is crazy and pretty out there, but just the just disintegration of our institutions to the point where just like I don't think anyone has faith in the outcome no matter what. It's just like we know that whatever comes out of this election, it's probably just not going to be good. We know that whatever follows the election probably is not a very good scenario to be in. So, just yeah, like I've been seeing that coming so far this year. I would say I didn't expect it, in years previous that I was going to get this bad. So, just we'll finish on climate change. Trump is what you would expect again. I mean, just like he can barely even admit that man-made climate change is a thing. He's obviously not going to do anything that's going to help the situation. He's going to make everything worse. I mean, just I'm sorry. Like there's no credit I could give to him there. Like I know that he's not going to be good on the environment. I know that Biden will be much stricter about how we regulate things and keeping things in terms of pollution better. Like that was one of the stronger arguments to vote for Hillary in 2016 was climate change. Even though it's like today with Biden, what I heard was they're not gonna ban fracking. Like they're putting limits on it, which is like yeah, like you're not going far enough. I'm sorry. But at the same time, in my head, I'm like, this is better than nothing. Like, you have to do whatever you can to get harm reduction in terms of climate change because you need a planet to survive, right? So, I know that Trump is not good on that issue. But Biden missed another opportunity yet again. And it even turned into kind of a gaffe because, like Biden was first. Trump was kind of accusing Biden of being like a part of the far left again, and he's saying like you're with the Green New Deal and Bernie, and then Biden said that's not my plan, that's not what I'm for, but then later on like Biden let it slip. He said like the Green New Deal will pay for itself, and then Chris Wallace like asked, I'm pretty sure like he caught that and just wanted to clarify. He's like, "Are you for the Green New Deal?" And then Biden's like, "No, I'm not." And then Trump's like, "Oh, you lost all your radical left supporters," and it's like it's really is a troll move by Trump. Like there is some awareness of what he's doing. I mean, look, like I've said before, the people who are Antifa, the people who are Black Lives Matter, a lot of them don't like Biden. A lot of them are not showing up to vote for Biden because Bernie's not on the ticket. Biden's not going far enough for them. And that perspective is hardly ever talked about. I mean, they talk about undecided voters like they're usually talking about people who are really moderate. So that debate last night did nothing to convince people on the left to vote for Biden. I mean, it was quite the opposite because he was like spitting in their face. Early in the debate, Biden was like, "I am the Democratic Party." Well, it's like you were saying for so long, like this Bernie Unity Task Force, like, oh, it's so important, like we got together and we're working on our differences and we're hearing both sides. Let the left kind of have their say and we can reach a compromise. But it's like, no, you're just controlling everything. Like you're saying whatever you say goes. It's like you're not held accountable to your constituents, or at least like you're just not going to listen to what we want. And he did that like on a lot of different subjects, and the Green New Deal, he's saying like he's not for that. I mean, there's not even a lot of specifics attached to this thing. I mean, it's just an idea, really. And that was interesting too with Antifa. Like Biden said, Antifa is just an idea, which I mean is true because they don't have the organization like freaking far right white extremists do, white supremacists. That they have actual organization. Antifa is just different sects of depending on where you are, and it's like Portland will probably have a bigger Antifa presence than say somewhere in Georgia. Like there's no hierarchy to Antifa. That's what anarchy is. Yeah, but just like Biden and the Green New Deal, like he screwed that up because he should have just said he was for that because there's nothing specific to that. It's just he is basically for something like that, investing in green energy. So they don't know how to message. The Democrats are struggling in terms of that, and it's just they don't know how to fight. I think it's not looking too great for Biden. I mean, the polls show that he's ahead. I think it's just a situation of him kind of eking things out, and as I've said before, like that's not very reassuring because we could just have a repeat of 2016. So, and again, like it could be worse. Like we don't know if the disparity in the popular vote could be greater, and then he still loses the electoral vote. So at the end of the day, Biden, he's underperforming, continuing to be a theme with his campaign, and though I would say like he has a chance to beat Trump, it's just things are not where they should be. He should be much stronger in the debates. I don't know what they got to do. Like pump him up with Adderall or something. Just he's got to be much stronger in the debates and take control of the conversation and call out the lies and focus on policy specifics. It's just got to be much sharper, and he's too repetitive when he talks. Like, it's boring. It's just they've got to get his messaging just a lot better. going forward.